about 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They've just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." The truth is about the Middle East is, had there been no oil there, it would be like Africa. Nobody is threatening to intervene in Africa. The problem is the opposite. We keep asking for people to intervene and stop it. And there's no question that the presence of petroleum throughout the region has sparked great power involvement. Whether that was the specific motivation for the coup or not, I can't tell you, but there's always been this attitude that somehow we could intervene and use force in the region.
Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! MashaAllah! MashaAllah! MashaAllah!
The so-called guarantors of the Syrian peace process, the presidents of Russia, Iran, and Turkey, are partners in the Astana negotiating framework. The leaders met to find consensus on how to carve up Syrian territory following the planned U.S. withdrawal of American troops from an area under the control of the Kurdish group, the YPG. It was clear even before the Sochi summit began that they didn't agree. Russia and Iran told Turkey that the Syrian government should regain control of northeast Syria once U.S. troops leave, and any plan to set up a safe zone in Syria along its borders would need the consent of President Bashar al-Assad's government.
The Turkish government's concerns should be taken into consideration. We believe cooperation with the legal government of Syria and deployment of Syrian soldiers alongside international borders is going to be more sustainable. Iran continues to be willing, alongside Russian friends, to play its role in order to ensure friendship between Syria and Turkey.
Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, once a close friend of the Syrian president, has been a staunch supporter of the opposition since the uprising began in 2011. Erdogan recently acknowledged that there have been low-level contacts between Turkey's and Syria's intelligence agencies.
The Turkish government wants a safe zone to push the U.S.-allied Kurdish armed group, the YPG, from its border. It considers the group a terrorist organization and a threat to its national security. Iran and Russia are acknowledging what they are calling Turkey's security concerns, but they want the Adana Agreement of 1998 to be revived, which means Damascus will rein in the YPG and provide the guarantees Turkey seeks.
Russia and Iran also have another demand. They want Turkey to clear a demilitarized zone from fighters in Idlib province. The province is under the control of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, a group many in the international community consider linked to al-Qaeda.
I'd like to stress the creation of the Idlib zone of de-escalation is a temporary measure. The rest of the rebels shouldn't go unpunished.
That may be a threat of a Russian-backed Syrian government offensive that Turkey wants to prevent so as not to cause a humanitarian crisis on its border.
Syrian people, especially in Idlib, our brothers and sisters, are trying to stay alive. They've suffered enough and have paid significantly. We will continue to do what we should be doing based on the Idlib Memorandum. We are determined not to make the situation worse.
The strategic interests of Russia, Iran and Turkey, not just in Syria, means their differences are unlikely to affect their alliance, but Turkey's feeling the pressure. Zara Khuder, Al Jazeera, Tehran.
Turkey's Ministry of National Defense announced the start of the deliveries of components of Russia's S-400 Triumph anti-aircraft missile systems. The first batch of the renowned system arrived at the airbase in Ankara province on the 12th of July. The shipments will last for a few days, a message from Turkey's Ministry of Defense said. As part of the deal, Turkey is expecting to receive 4 S-400 missile systems. The components of the systems were delivered to Turkey on board the Ilyushin Il-76 cargo aircraft of Russia's Amerkam. Putin's official spokesman Dmitry Peskov confirmed the start of the deliveries. The components of the system will be delivered in strict accordance with agreements and contracts, the Kremlin spokesman said. Turkish TV channel Haber Turk said the 3 Russian cargo aircraft carrying components of the S-400 Triumph complex have already landed at the Turkish airbase.
And because Russia is not prepared to submit, and China is not prepared to submit, is going to checkmate them, and NATO can do nothing to stop it. Praise be to Allah who allowed us to understand the Quran. They're going to be checkmated. A nuclear war would be one in which nuclear powers will use every single nuclear weapon that they possibly can use, because it's going to be a fight to the finish. And so the world can now expect that if a nuclear war were to take place, excuse me, too late now to say if, rather it should be when the nuclear war takes place, The only ones who don't know that a nuclear war is coming are those, Roti Canai, Tetari people. When the nuclear war takes place, because they've already declared war on Russia. If you're living in France and Britain and in Western Europe, and if you don't know that your leaders have declared war on Russia, and the nuclear war is now inevitable, and when that nuclear war takes place, that thousands of nuclear weapons will explode. If you don't know that, then you are living in dreamland. And if you hope to survive in Western Europe, you're also living in dreamland. That's the price you pay for having Zionist rulers ruling over you. That's the price. I hope you're listening to me, Europe. I hope you're listening to me in Europe. And I hope you're listening to me in the United States and Canada. That is the price that you will pay for having those ruling over you, who are ruling on behalf of the Zionists, who are Zionists. And the nuclear war is now inevitable. The war which is coming, the big nuclear war which is coming, to which we'll refer subsequently, inshallah, is